All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Thanks for joining us today. This is John Fitzgerald from Pomerol Partners. Here today to talk about advanced visualizations for Qlik Sense using the Vizlib suite of extensions. Just a brief background. I swear I won't try to bore you to death with a whole bunch of stuff about Pomerol, but Pomerol Partners started in London, spun out of Deutsche Bank about 5 years ago. A lot of financial services background, but we've been on the Qlik Partner Advisory Council. We're one of their top partners in financial services, but we also do a lot of work with SAP as well as a number of other source systems. In addition to Qlik, we partner with a wide range of products. So Qlik being our core focus. I put our Pomerol logo up there. We actually have a technology arm that builds out our own extensions. We've built out something called cross-module analytics for reporting in the SAP space. Vizlib, obviously, that's why everybody is here today. Big Squid and Data Robot, which are machine learning platforms. K4 Analytics, which is a business process suite. So doing things like budgeting and forecasting inside of an extension inside of Qlik. Node Graph, which is great for data lineage inside of your Qlik applications. Sense Excel, which does standardized reporting. Couchbase, which is a NoSQL platform, very good for Internet of Things and other reasons why you might want to do NoSQL, because there's not necessarily a schema attached to anything. So it's very, very flexible. And then we partner with a lot of ETL engines and other tools as well. Qlik is really the center of our universe. And so what we want to talk about today is Vizlib. So again, I don't like to go through a ton of background information. I'd rather just kind of demo the product. Do feel free to hit the chat button, ask questions, raise your hand. But Vizlib is a supported set of highly customized or customizable extensions. You'll notice that there are a few of them that are part of the new Qlik Trusted Extension Developer Program, or TED. And you see the logos on those visualizations. So it was founded in the UK by some folks, Martin Mahler, David L. Sabero, and Adam Cook. They started a couple of years ago when they realized that there were some limitations in terms of the flexibility and configuration of some of the out-of-the-box out-of-the-box visualizations that are part of the Qlik Sense platform. Since that time, they've added on a ton of additional extensions. So we've got a calendar object, we've got a bullet charts, bar charts, line charts, a container object, which is great, a Venn diagram, an advanced text object where you can tie actions to it. Filter panes, they came out with a new pivot table this year. They've got a very advanced Scatterplot and activity chart, pie chart. Heat map, combo chart, which is coming up, storyline and Sankey. And then you can see that they've also got some additional stuff on their roadmap for this year. One of the great things about using Vizlib, first of all, they continue to expand on the functionality of their existing extensions. They are also continuously improving or expanding the suite. And as part of your subscription to Vizlib, you continue to get that new functionality. You don't have to do anything special for it. The other thing that I try to stress is this is supported. So a lot of people go to branch.qlik.com and they start grabbing extensions. And then when there's an upgrade, periodically, those extensions will break, and then you're stuck without anybody to support. So with Vizlib, you actually do have full support. So if an issue comes up or there's a new version of Qlik, you can be assured that they've already tested it, and those bug fixes are included for free. So also, if you do this subscription model, you can choose whether you want something to automatically update or whether you want to stick with some of the older versions. For those of you that are at enterprise accounts, you don't necessarily want things changing because you're not necessarily keeping up with the latest and greatest version of Qlik Sense. So what this allows you to do is stick with something that's been tested and upgrade at your own pace. as I was preparing for this, the other thing that I found very exciting, I guess that's the geek in me speaking, but alternate states. So alternate states is something that was available in Qlik View very readily towards the end. I think it came out in late in version 10 or maybe the beginning of version 11. And what that allows you to do is actually have two different sets of selections visualized in the same chart. And basically Vizlib has started implementing alternate states across all of their extensions. So alternate states is something that you could implement using the APIs, but it wasn't necessarily something that was user-friendly. It wasn't something that was easy to do for the average user. So what they've done is they've actually exposed that API through all of their extensions, and then you can carry over those alternate states across a wide range of visualizations in your application. So that being said, we'll start with a demo. I'm going to go kind of from my least favorite to my most favorite. But as I came up with this plan of attack, you saw that there are a lot of different extensions as part of this suite. I started looking through all the extensions and I started saying, okay, I'm not really a big fan of pie charts, but I did want to I did want to sorry, Qlik is freaking out here. I did want to go through these, and I was trying to figure out which one is my least favorite. Everybody bags on pie charts. I'm one of those people that says that pie charts are somewhat worthless. But I think the Vizlib implementation of pie charts gives you a lot more functionality. So you can see that inside of my pie charts, I can do things like have different tooltips. You know, I can have as many tooltips as I want to that will appear when I hover over. There's a lot of flexibility and customization in terms of the layout. So I can do full pie charts, donut charts. I can control how wide the donuts are. I can control things like what color schemes I'm using, etc. For the rest of this time that we have together, I'm going to go through a lot of this stuff fairly quickly. I'm going to show you some of the configuration options, but given the fact that there's 20 plus visualizations in here, I'm obviously not going to be able to go into a lot of depth, but I want to show you just some of the functionality that's available. So you can see here, for a pie chart, the things that I can customize, I can obviously add a dimension in, I can add measures in. Anything that's not the main measure is going to show up just as a tooltip, but I can continue adding those. Obviously, I can change the sorting, etc. And then some of the other appearance things that I can change, some of the standard stuff, but also whether it's a pie or a donut, I can change things like whether I have data points on there, what the legend does, different color schemes. So there's a whole bunch more color schemes than is available out of the box with Qlik. Interactivity, so I can set things kind of as read-only so that people can't update that. And then here's where I was talking about the alternate states. So if I turn on this alternate state manager, then I can go and I can add an alternate state. And I click test, and then I can set this so that it's a different alternate state. Now, if I go and I select, something, you'll notice that this one did not appear or this one did not change, and that's because it's in a different state. Right? And I'll tag onto that again as we go through the presentation. Right? So. Other things that I can do with the pie chart, put the values inside of the pie, have whiskers coming out of the lines. I can set so that it spins when I wheel my mouse. Sometimes it's a little easier if something is on the top or the bottom, depending on what I'm looking at. I can show a totals value inside of the visualization, and then you can see there's a whole bunch of different palettes available, as well as being able to make things different levels of opacity. So if I'm not trying to call attention to it, but I want the information there, I might want to make it a little bit more opaque or less opaque. And again, tooltips, as many as you want to, and this comes in very, very handy when I'm trying to do, maybe a breakdown of sales by key accounts, by product line, etc. All right, the next one I was going to talk about is the Venn diagram. So Venn diagrams are helpful when you're trying to show where there's some overlap. So they're good for things like cross-sell and upsell opportunities. In this case, we have Last.fm, different users, what their overlap is. People that listen to Lil Wayne don't necessarily listen to Radiohead very often or the Beatles very often, but people that listen to the Beatles do tend to listen more to Radiohead. And so I can configure this so that I'm just looking at the intersection of those users and those artists. I can see that there's 90 people that listen to both Radiohead and the Beatles in a single visualization. Other things that you can do, you can format the text. I think that's one of the recurring themes that I see across the Vizlib suite is just a lot of flexibility in terms of formatting of text, labels, etc. Here you see, I've got bold white text with a value that's grayed and underlined. Really being able to call attention to different things and change the opacity, the borders, etc. The next one I wanted to show off was the activity gauge. So activity gauge, and the other thing to keep in mind while I'm going through this, all of these examples are available on the Vizlib website. So if you're going and you're looking at Vizlib, you can download these applications and you can actually play with them. But the activity gauge, I can set up different color schemes. I can have different hover over text. I can have different pop-ups, etc. If I go and I look at some of the properties of my visualization, I can say what dimension I'm using. So in that case, it's market segment. I can have a number of different measures in there. I can change around the sorting, some of the standard stuff with data formatting, etc. But here I can do things like add an icon in the middle of the visualization. I can add text in the middle of the visualization. I can put a description on the arc. So you see here it says what the segment is on the arc. And I can configure the formatting of this as well. So I can configure the font family, the formatting, etc. Some of the animations. So in this case, we're enabling the animations. So when the screen loads, it's going to actually show those different bars filling in. Again, I can enable read-only mode or quick select. And here's my alternate states manager. So I could set this to an alternate state that was available in my application. You can color it different backgrounds so you can match it to your Sense theme. I hope everybody knows that we can now apply different themes to our different applications. This allows us to make sure that things blend in with that background theme. And then we've got just some other examples. So here you see they're actually putting an icon and some text inside of the visualization itself. Here again, we've got some icons that are being displayed, and those can be dependent on different measures. Next up would be the heat map. So the heat map is one of their older visualizations that they've had in the library for quite some time now. Again, lots and lots of functionality. The thing that we like to use heat maps for is when you've got a large amount of data and you're really trying to call out patterns across a large data set. So we see it used a lot more in things like mapping, where I'm trying to find hotspots of customers or hotspots of complaints, etc. But also if I'm looking at here I've got sales reps and I've got the products that they're actually selling. Really great configuration or configurability for color schemes, as well as, do I want the lines to show up? Makes it very easy for me to see these dark spots, what exactly is driving that. So it looks like Carl is selling a lot of produce. Some of the different settings, we can put measures on the tiles. We can change the scale around if we want to. We can change things to make it bubbles if that fits into our overall theme of our applications. And I'll go through some of the other settings that you can do. So we can have multiple dimensions in there. We could have multiple measures if we wanted to. Those would pop up as tooltips if we added multiple measures. Change around the sorting. The other great thing is we can have multiple reference lines in there. So I'll go over to another. Visualization here. So here you see some examples of some reference lines that have been put in there. So, if sales are above a certain amount, we're going to put a nice thick reference line in. For buy the beer, you can see it's got a lot of flexibility for how I configure that. I can make it dotted, solid, different colors. I can make the text align differently, the text different, different fonts, etc. Right, so lots and lots of flexibility compared to how the native Qlik Sense heat maps perform. The next one I wanted to show off was the filter. So, obviously with Qlik, filtering is one of those really important things. We want it to be easy for people to filter down on their data. What the Vizlib extension allows us to do is do even more customizations on that. So I've got the ability to do radio buttons for selections, so turning them on and off that way. I can configure the visualization or the filters. I can configure them to have different color schemes depending on how something is selected. I can do drop downs, LEDs, check boxes, anything that fits into my overall scheme. So some people get wedded to a particular way of looking at stuff. If you want to integrate something into your ERP system or into Salesforce.com, you're going to get better uptake from your users if you do not, or if it looks more close to the native interface that it's embedded in. So this allows you to do all of that. You can also see that I can have different button groups. I can turn those on and off. I can set different ways of filtering. So here I've got just this that's the word I'm looking for. A grid of the different values. So this display type is called button group, but you can see there's also list boxes and drop downs. I can style those buttons, say how it's laying out horizontally or vertically. And then in this case, we've got this custom width. But again, a lot of these things, a lot more of these visualizations have these functions available, so I can use expressions to change how things are formatting. Right? So I could call attention to something that I want to be able to select more easily. Here I've got actually a drill down, so I can configure the functions, or I'm sorry, the filters to drill down. Here you see I've got the ability to say, show me only products that exist in more than 3 companies. And that setting is available in in the dimensions, you can see I can do a conditional show. So I'm only showing the values where the count of the company is greater than 3. All right, so great way to do my top 10 products, my top 10 sales reps, etc., or bottom 10 of either one of those. Some additional styling, again, I can change the headers around on this. I can change the functionality of it so that it's a drop down. I can save a lot of valuable real estate compared to some of the other native Qlik extensions. Next up would be the advanced text box or advanced text object. But it would actually suggest that we use the formatting that they put on there, but you can see there's flexibility for doing backgrounds. There's flexibility for those of you that like Comic Sans. There's flexibility to round different edges, different borders, make things a little bit softer for those text objects. We can also do things with the advanced text object to actually embed actions in there. So if I go look at this, go to the next sheet. All right, here's the actual text. You can see that I can put icons in there. I can change the font colors, the font face. I can say whether a button shows up or only shows up some of the time. I can do other things with the border, whether it's solid, if there's any radiuses on any of the corners. I can change the background image. Here's the tooltip settings. So if I enable the tooltip, there will be a pop-up over it when I hover over it. The interactivity, being able to scroll text or wrap the text. And then here you see that I've got some actions that are configurable. So I can do things like activate the next sheet. I can set variables. I can reload the application if I so choose. It's not one that you would want to allow a lot of people to do, but it is available. So these are some of the more commonly used things that we used to do in QlikView that now we can also do in Qlik Sense with those actions. And again, it's something that in a lot of cases you could have done it on your own if you were to build. What these guys have done is they've built out this whole suite of extensions and they all come at once. We've got custom tooltips, so I can pop things up. I can make them, I can format them however I want to. You can see in this case I have some animations popping up. I can have multiple different things. And I can also change the position of these tooltips however I want to. So loads and loads of flexibility on the text objects. Next up, another really common thing that happens to us as we're doing implementations is I need to do a calendar to be able to select stuff, especially if I'm doing things like show me the last 3 months, show me the last week. It's not necessarily easy to do that in a traditional Qlik. Well, I guess I'm going to bypass the calendar demo, but there's a lot of functionality in there in terms of doing things like automatically select the last 3 days or last week, the last month, and you can configure all of those time periods. You can set things up in a calendar. You can completely format the calendar. And things like whether it's square, bubbles, how big it is, whether it's a drop down, etc. The next one that I was going to show off is the Sankey. Just reload my page real quickly. Well, it wouldn't be a webinar without some kind of technical issues. Well, this could be because I'm running through so many different applications at one time, and I'm actually running my entire Qlik Sense server locally. So bear with me 1 minute here while I try to, there we go. So Sankey charts are great for showing flow through a bunch of different dimensions. So here you can see we've got some open cases, different priorities, who was the requester, what was the resolution. I can do things like alternate dimensions. So in some cases, I want to look at it by priority. Maybe I want to look at it by department instead. So now I've changed that department. So lots of flexibility for changing around the different perspectives that you're seeing in this Sankey chart. Now, my personal favorite is the Scatterplot. So the one I'm going to show off right now is a visualization of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So what we're trying to show here is correlation between different things. In this case, most of you are probably familiar with quadrants. So we've got the ability to execute and completeness of vision. We see this a lot of times with sales reps, where we're looking at the number of orders versus the average order size. We're looking at margin versus revenue dollars, and we're trying to identify outliers. The great thing that this visualization does is it also allows me to see things like trending over time. I can select just a couple of different companies if I want to. So we'll look at Qlik and SAP. And then if I wanted to just show, maybe the past 3 years worth of history. Now, when I've made that selection, you can see how those have moved just over those 3 years of history. The other thing that we can do is we can put background text. We can change around the legends or the labels in here. So you see we've got challengers, leaders, visionaries, niche players. You can do custom formatting of the background objects. So I can put these quadrants in there and call attention to them. And if I just go into a different scatter plot, what we'll see are some of the other ways that you can leverage this and some of the other functionality. All right, so here you can see I've turned on these lines that go out to the different axes, but I've also turned on when I hover over, it's going to show me the movement over time as well. All right. And if I just go into edit mode, you'll see some of the functionality that's available in here. So here's my data. I've got multiple dimensions in there. I can add alternative dimensions. There's my two measures. I could add a third measure and have it be the size of the bubble. I can put in those XY reference lines if I want to, but I can also put in reference bubbles. And in this case, I did reference areas. So you see these different areas. And here we've got low risk, high return. I can call that label out using a function or just hard code it in there. I can say what the label size is, whether the label is appearing or not, what the X value is and what the Y value is. And again, these are things that you can control via an expression. So they can resize themselves dynamically if you were looking at, maybe putting something that showed top 10% of your customers, top 10% of your sales reps, et cetera. I can say whether the axis is fixed or not. I can format the axis labels. I can make, in this case, we've got it black. We've got it a nice large font. We've got it bolded. I can put in a drop shadow if I wanted to. So all kinds of different things that I can do in here. Changing some of the bubble formatting. So what size bubble? In this case, we've hard coded it, but we could change the bubble size based off of another expression. I can say whether the grid is dashed, a solid line. I can say what thickness it is, etc. So a lot of different things in there that you can configure. And again, whether we allow selections or not. So we can make any of these charts a read-only chart as well. And then here's my alternate states. Again, it's available in here. So really great functionality to have is to be able to maybe compare one year versus another year and have them overlaying on top of each other. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to show that off right now, but if you're interested in following up with us, we're happy to demo more advanced functionality of this. The next thing I wanted to cover was the line chart. Again, one of their extensions that's been out for a longer period of time. So what you'll see in here is I've got the ability to show a number of different styles of visualization or of line thickness, etc. Try going to a different browser again. There we go. So lots of different things that you can do. In this case, we've got actually some pie charts. You've heard my feelings on pie charts. So putting them onto a line chart as the visualization, not necessarily something that you would do on a regular basis, but maybe you want to see a percentage across a couple of different dimensions. Over time, why is this value on the line higher than these other two values around it? Maybe the product mix changed, something like that. Sales over time is the typical reason why we use a line chart, but you can see I can remove the y-axis or the x-axis. I can put virtually anything that I want to in as a marker. So here you can see we've got a Qlik logo in there. I can also make it so that when I hover over stuff, it goes in focus, but I don't lose the rest of the story. I can configure the line and the markers kind of infinitely. So if I go and just look at some of the possibilities in there. So my date is typically my only dimension on a line chart. But here I've got multiple different measures in there. I can change the sorting. Here's my reference objects, so I can do reference lines on the X or Y axis. I can do some annotations on there if I want to. And you'll see other things that I can change around in terms of the overall appearance. This one is really handy. I can also do conditional measures and cumulative values. So if I have cost of sales, I want to turn that one on, and then maybe I want to do also overall sales.